G'day guys, so it's 20 here and welcome back to Marble Mountain. You guys are so lucky to be getting double Marble Mountain episodes in 1 week. Man, I must really like you guys. Truth be told, I do like you guys, but I also really like playing in this map right now. So I can't stop playing. I can't stop recording either. I probably need to slow down and focus on some of my other series before I get too carried away. But honestly, I just want to keep building. I'm really loving this little town that we worked on, and I'm pretty excited to get into some of these farmyards. Keep calling them farmyards. They're not called farmyards, they're called farms. I need to start working on more of these farms and really start expanding out places. I'm pretty sure we still... No, we've already filled our need for industry, and we're back up to some demand for residential. Oh man, it's just a never-ending battle, honestly. I feel like I'm always plopping down houses. I bet if I put this on fast, then yeah, look at that. That is ridiculous. Alright, that's annoying. I need to be plopping down more houses. I'm not going to. I'm going to plop down a couple, I guess, as I work around here. But honestly, I am more focused on finishing up. I'm going to say finishing. I'm probably not when I get into the time lapse, but I want to work around here and get some farms in. And I've actually been flying around San Francisco, like around the outskirts of it, where all the farms are, and just trying to get some ideas of what I want to build. Actually, I might get Google Earth up in a second. Just hold on one sec. Okay, that's better. Now I can actually show you what I'm talking about. So I've been checking out this area a lot recently as I've been working on these farms around Marble Mountain. San Fran's in here, and these are a whole bunch of farms that sit in this really interesting landscape. I mean, it's surrounded by mountains, and there's the ocean around here. Yeah, this place is really quite cool. If you live around here, by the way, please hit me up in the comments. There's a whole bunch of cities that sit in here, and I find that really crazy because, like, that's an Australian city. And there's just like a bunch of them that sit in here. Always blows my mind when I check out other places in the world because Australia is so underdeveloped, which... maybe I'll talk about that in the time lapse. I need to stick with what I want to show you, and that is these farms that I am taking lots of inspiration for. So the farms that I build are going to be mostly rectangular, and I mean, looking from here, they are all just completely different shapes. And I need to make sure that I actually include a lot of these more angular areas too, and not just keep it all rectangle shapes. And even things like this, you know, that really just shows that not everything is as perfect as right angles, rectangles. So I'm gonna make sure that I steer clear of just keeping it fully even and neat, especially as it gets closer to these mountains. And I think for around the city, or sorry, around the town I should say, that's probably a better size. Yeah, they're generally... so it looks like the farms usually start from where the roads finish, and then... so it's like a real clear border where the town is, and then where the paddocks also sit. I think I'm probably going to stick with mostly crops rather than cattle, at least for around this particular area, and then we might, you know, do some cattle in some other locations. It's a shame I didn't get that train line going through the heart of that town, but I might leave that sort of thing for another spot within Marble Mountain. There's definitely going to be many other opportunities for it. Man, this area is so similar to the area that I'm working in Marble Mountain. If you didn't realize, this is that interchange that I was working on, and it's right next to a wind farm, and like that highway is exactly what I did, and even this interchange is pretty close to what I was trying to achieve at least. And do you see how, you know, because we are only just out of a main city, we have quite a lot of like bits and pieces that sit within these hills, and that is what I'm going to be doing around these hillsides. Is I don't want them just to be pure national parks or areas of just pure bushland. I do want there to be a real a real mix of different things that sit amongst these hillsides. So, you know, whether it's mining or, you know, racetracks or like little towns or, you know, there's just lots of bits and pieces that sit within these hills that I do want to make sure I include, because we are still pretty close to Montana, and I think that's important. And I also would like to, and I'm noticing a lot with these towns. Let's see if I can find one. Here we go. This is a pretty good example. So that's a very recent development. At least that was, you know, that's a more recent development than, you know, the heart of the town, obviously. So I also would like to add some more recent developments within this small town that I built. And I think that around here would probably be a good spot for it. You know, the road layout will be very different to this. There'll be, you know, some cul-de-sacs and other little bits and pieces. I might even do it around here. I haven't really quite decided. And that's it. That's what I'm going to do. Alright, let's jump into the time lapse and smash out some work. Okie dokie, so I have now obviously finished the build now that I'm doing the commentary, and I can say that this was quite difficult to place down some farms in this particular area. The landscape is very, very uneven, and there is pretty much like sheer cliff right along the waterfront, which I don't think works very well for this area. So I decided to do a bit of terraforming just to push back the cliff face a little bit more into the mountainside, and also try to make a little bit more gradual slopes around this area. It's really tricky working with uneven terrain, but I generally prefer working in maps that have very uneven and very diverse landscapes rather than working in a flat map. Marble Mountain is definitely a map that has a lot of slopes and a lot of mountains, which makes it really tricky, but I also much prefer it. I think it makes for much better looking cities. They're far more interesting, and this particular area was really quite tricky to work with because there's just so many uneven surfaces. And particularly like working with farms that cover these huge amounts of space, a lot of them need quite a lot of room to actually fit in the right place. So yeah, that was the first struggle that I had. So just going into this, decided to just do a little bit of terraforming and place down some roads just to figure out the general layout for this area. And I also wanted to build some other roads that wasn't a highway going out into the mountainside. This is this road that you can see me working on now. I wanted it to be a little bit more rural and probably less traveled on, and it doesn't connect up to the city just yet. This road's gonna go all the way through the mountainside, and then it'll connect up to the city. It'll connect up to the suburbs. It'll be a little bit of a highway, but there will also be some small houses and some other, maybe some bigger houses closer to the city. I'm actually looking forward to working on that road, and I might even build another road that leads towards the city, but I think, yeah, I'm pretty happy with just that road going towards the city. We do have a couple of highways for people to get to, for people to use to get from this town to the city. So yeah, I just decided to leave it like that. And yeah, just place down a couple more suburbs. I'm just very conscious of the fact that we do need more people and more residents in the city. Sorry, in Marble Mountain. We are sitting just under 20,000 residents, and I don't know, I'm in two minds, to be honest. First of all, I do really like a large population, and 20,000 is not too bad. I think that reflects pretty well with how the city looks at the moment. But then at the same time, having a large population in your city skyline cities, it can cause a lot more lag, and it can cause more problems when it comes to seeing how the game mechanics work, because generally things get more messed up, and the simulation gets more messed up as you increase the population. So I don't know, I wouldn't mind keeping the population quite low, even though it's a little bit unrealistic. But at the same time, I do want to increase the population just so that I don't get any abandonment along these more industry areas and more of the commercial areas too. I really hate the abandonment that happens within this map. I know that Strictos is also encountering this problem, and yeah, this is something that happens to me a lot. A lot of my buildings, even though I have the no abandonment mods, a lot of my buildings do go abandoned, and I think it happens when I load the game up, and then it it's like all of a sudden, as soon as I load it up, no matter what I do, the buildings they just become abandoned, and it's generally a complaint that there's not enough workers or there's not enough resources for that area. The houses don't go abandoned, it's just the industry and it's just the commercial. And it's a real pain because abandoned buildings in your city, of course that is realistic, that is obviously a thing that happens, but the abandoned buildings in this game just don't look very good, so I'll try to avoid it as much as possible. And there's probably about, 15 abandoned buildings sitting in Marble Mountain at the moment, which isn't very high, but I would like that number down to 0, to be honest. And especially as we start getting a little bit bigger, that is the last thing I want to be seeing in the city. Alright, I've just placed down my first farm. I think this is a wheat farm, and I think I might end up changing at some stage. I can't remember what I end up doing, but yeah, I think it looks fine for now. And I just thought I'd build a house that sat inside this crop, and obviously this house owns this farm, and I just thought that would be the idea behind a lot of these farms around here, is that they're more privately owned. They're not owned by big business. They're not owned by a big corporation. It's just a small local farm that is owned by probably a family or something like that. And I think that's probably quite true for a lot of farms that sit quite close to cities. It's generally when you get a little bit further out of the cities, then you generally see a lot more commercial farms. And yeah, I just wanted to keep this area quite low key, and obviously these farms are quite big, but I sort of see myself going a lot bigger as we get a little bit further out. And I still can't figure out whether I should have the same types of farms within the same area. I'm obviously not a farmer, and I have seen and I have gone to a lot of farms, but I just can't remember if that would be a more realistic touch. So hit me up in the comments if you have any suggestions. At the moment, I'm thinking of keeping this whole area to dedicated to a particular type of crop. It looks like we're going, at the moment we've got wheat and we've got cotton, and I'm generally just choosing whatever at the moment based on what fits the best in terms of the crop, because some of them, as you can see on the screen, some of them don't interact with uneven surface very well, whereas others are they work a lot better. So the cotton and the wheat farms, they generally terraform really nicely, so they're the ones that I've been choosing. But I am quite conscious that I do want to start making some more cattle farms and some other types of farms around this area too. A cool little technique that you just saw me do was I decided to place down I guess an irrigation system, or a small canal that separates the farm to the mountain, and that's actually something I saw around that area that I was looking at before, and I thought that'd be a pretty cool touch. It's a nice barrier between the mountain and the farm, and I guess that's there for real life, because I guess there's quite a lot of runoff from the mountain when, if they're covered in snow or if there's rain, and just mountains in generally produce quite a lot of water running off them. So I think these channels are quite important, and they obviously run away from the farms so that, the actual crops aren't flooded with water on a regular basis. And yeah, that worked really nicely. That's a vanilla asset that is just as a network. I can't remember what it was introduced in the game, but It's one of those assets that I just forget about all the time. It's not an asset, it's a network. And I decided to drag a footpath along it too, so that it's not quite as deep, and it also gives it a little bit more of a muddy texture to it. I thought it was quite a cool technique, and it's something I'm going to use a little bit more, particularly in Marble Mountain when I build some more farmyards. Not farmyards. Why do I keep building farmyards? More farms. I reckon more around this area too, because there's quite a lot of hills, quite a lot of mountains as well. You'll see me do a little bit of terraforming and a bit more work around the mountains too. They're looking a little bit bare. I think that the landscaping tool that I'm using to create the texture on the mountains works quite nicely, but it does create a very dry landscape, which is fine because I think this area is quite a dry area, and it does make the around where the farms are and the village is, and also where the water is, look quite green and nice. But it does look a little bit dry and barren without any vegetation, and I don't want to go too dense with the vegetation, so I'm just trying to find that happy medium so that it looks it actually looks right. So we'll go back and do a little bit of fixing up, and I think it looks probably how I want it to look, but I might go back and touch it up. That might be a job for a live stream, which, by the way, live streams are coming probably in the next couple of weeks, because I'm just trying to get my setup super nice so that I'm not I don't know, so I'm not doing the wrong thing in a live stream, because so much can go wrong on a live stream that I just want to make sure everything's exactly how it should be before I jump in on that. Alright, I've just built another little strip of houses, and also built another row of crops, which I think I'm gonna delete that row of crops. Mainly, I mean, I think it looks really cool where it is, and there's really no problems with how it looks. It's more, I'm not really sure how crops are on a on like an uneven surface like that one. That surface is really steep, and I don't know how realistic that is, so I think I might end up deleting it, but I don't know, we'll see what happens. This row of houses though, I think look really quite fantastic. I'm just doing some really simple detailing on it. Basically just dragged some fence networks around the backyards, and also did some just around the front yards too. It really helps to create a bit of realism, and especially when you change the type of fences that sit in each different house, because obviously houses have different fences depending on the sort of fence that person has bought. Yeah, I think that worked really nicely. Obviously, I'm not going to do it for everything in Marble Mountain, but in areas that are quite detailed and interesting, I think it works quite well. And for the last little thing that I'm building, I am building a park mainly to just like enhance a bit of the land value around here, because it's quite low. But also, I did want this town to have its own, pretty much stand for itself. It is still quite close to the city, but I think it needed some sort of recreational area. But basically, this town has its own fire station, police station, schools. It has now a park, has jobs. It is pretty much a solid town, and it shouldn't have to rely on any other areas within Marble Mountain to basically find anything that they don't have. Obviously it doesn't have everything that the large city has, Montana, but these guys are really lucky because they are quite close. It's like a 40-minute drive into the city, and really that's no big deal to go and see like a movie or visit some of the more sort of the resources that you would find in a big city. And for the last little bit of this episode, I wanted to just do a bit of work on the mountain. So a lot of the mountains around the cities and around the towns, I do want them to look like people are still interacting with them quite a lot. They're not just totally wilderness. They are, they have paths running along them. There's a little bit of infrastructure. There might be some small houses, just like little bits that show that people are around here. And then this is like the last little bit of human interaction with the natural environment, and then it just goes into nature, which, you know, outskirts of cities, that is generally my thing. I think it's always cool when you see like highly dense areas and then they just slowly creep out into the natural environment. It's always the more interesting parts of the builds for me. But guys, that is it for this episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you've enjoyed it, don't forget to leave some nice feedback in the comments section, or just by rating up the video. Also helps me out a hell of a lot. So thanks to those guys who always do that. Much appreciated. This weekend, Bordertown will be back on your screens, and the week after, Marble Mountain will be back. We'll be building around this small town, no doubt. But anyway, have a great week. I'll see you in the next one. See you later.